Return to page 28 in your notes. Section. Is it love? Satan is busily engaged in influencing those who are wholly unsuited to each other to unite their interests. He exalts in this work, for by it, this work, he can produce more misery and hopeless woe in the human family than by exercising his skill in any other direction. I think this is why one of the three models that we have, agriculture, building, and marriage, is a thing that's repeated over and over again in the scriptures. Because God really wants us to understand how marriages are supposed to operate and work. Because if you get married to the wrong person, it's through this vehicle, as opposed to any other, that he can produce more misery and hopelessness in the human family, in the heart of a person, than by any other means. True love is a high and holy principle, altogether different in character from that love which is awakened by impulse, which suddenly dies when severely tested. True love is not a strong, fiery, impetuous passion. On the contrary, it is calm and deep in its nature. It looks beyond mere externals and is attracted by qualities alone. It is wise and discriminating, and its devotion is real and abiding. This is one of the most problematic areas, I think, especially for men, this issue of what love really is. And we're told here that it looks beyond mere externals and is attracted by qualities alone. So when she compares externals with qualities, you know that these qualities are not external qualities. They're not things about the exterior of a woman or a man, but they're dealing with the spiritual or internal qualities of a person. And most people disregard or overlook the importance of these internal qualities. We become fixated by the external. Love is not unreasonable. It is not blind. It is pure and holy. But the passion of the natural heart is another thing altogether. So again, it brings up this idea, this thought of the natural heart. And we want to understand that unless a person is converted, what will they have? Passion. So to enter into a relationship, if you're not convinced in your own self, in your own awareness, that you are a converted person, you should not be engaging in any kind of courtship activity or pursuing or even hoping for a partner. While pure love will take God into its plans and will be in perfect harmony with the Spirit of God, passion will be headstrong, rash, unreasonable, defiant of all restraint, and will make the object of its choice an idol. issue about entering into a courtship is fraught with danger and it's problematic. And part of the reason for that is most people who enter into this relationship are unconverted. One suggestion that I always like to give when a person, male or female, begins to be interested in someone is to consult widely with friends, brethren, sisters, depending on who it is, who they have confidence in, to seek advice on whether or not this future partner is actually compatible or suitable. And this leads me on to this subject of secret courtships or deceptive courtships. It seems to be quite a common feature amongst God's people that courtships are carried out secretly and not out in the open. And this kind of conduct is productive of nothing but bad, in my opinion. No good can come out of a secret courtship when you don't inform people and make them aware of what's going on. Suspicions arise, it gives an appearance of evil, but worse than that, you restrict people's ability to give you counsel and instruction on whether or not what you're doing is right or wrong. And my advice to everybody would be that if you are considering a person, that before you even approach them, even before you approach her parents, if you're a man, that you consult with brethren of experience and seek advice and counsel on what they think before anybody else, before the person, if you're a man, before the girl even knows that you're interested. And if those brethren of counsel say no, you should close the book up and move on. And so few people do that, which is why so many marriages are, as we just read, miserable, hopeless, and a woe to the human family. It's not in your notes. It's taken from Testament's Church, Volume 4, page 503, paragraph 3. It's 4T 503. We are living in the last days when the mania or madness upon the subject of marriage constitutes one of the signs of the near coming of Christ. So this idea of marrying and giving in marriage is taken to the state of madness or mania, and is one of the signs of the last days. God is not consulted in these matters. Religion, duty and principle are sacrificed to carry out the promptings of the unconsecrated heart. You know, if we're just focused on heart conversion, on the message, and became converted people, most of, I don't know how many pages, most of these 54 pages that are the notes on courtship and marriage wouldn't be needed. Most of this counsel is given to restrain unconverted people from making mistakes, or unconverted people having already made mistakes on how to extricate themselves out of this problem. But if we were converted people, most of this counsel wouldn't be needed, because we're unconverted and we enter into relationships in an unconverted state that these woes and problems occur. So I can't emphasize enough to ensure that you have a self-awareness that you are a converted person, that your friends, people who know you, recognize that you're converted, and then once that condition has been achieved, if you are then interested in marriage and you see a young lady, that the first thing you need to ascertain is whether or not she's converted. And that takes time. It takes time to test and to prove whether or not she's converted. And that takes help and assistance from people outside of yourself. People who have a watch care over your soul. This is why it's so essential not to have secret courtships. I know here in the African continent, in various cultures, that it's hard because of the dynamics of how your cultures work and how parents are informed or not allowed to be informed before or after the courtship. There's cultural issues. And I don't fully profess to understand all the dynamics. I'm not sure that they're even consistent in a group of this size. Even in your own country, I don't think there's a uniformity in practices and procedures. But I think beyond all of those difficulties, if you're considering courtship, you should consult with brethren and ask for guidance. And if I could even make it a stronger statement, ask permission whether or not you should even approach your prospective partner or this person that you like. Seek for permission, and if you don't get that permission from people who you have confidence in, move on. Move on. There should be no great display and rejoicing over the union of the parties. There is not one marriage in 100 that results happily, that bears the sanction of God and places the parties in a position better to glorify Him. Remember, we read that this morning. Don't enter into marriage. Paul told us this. Ellen White commented on his passage from 1 Corinthians 7. Unless you are certain that your marriage will aid you in getting into heaven. If you're not certain of that fact, you're forbidden to marry. And here we're told that not one marriage in 100 results happily, that has the sanction of God and places parties, the man and the lady, in a position for them to better glorify God. The evil consequences of poor marriages are numberless. They're contracted from impulse. A candid review of the matter is scarcely thought of, and consultation with those of experience is considered old-fashioned, unnecessary. In fact, I would go further and say this: the reason why most people will not consult, why would we think they wouldn't consult?
They know in their heart that it's not okay.
Because they know in their hearts the answer is going to be no. They know in their hearts the answer is going to be no, so they don't want to consult. So they have this secret practice, and they draw the affections. Often men do this. They draw the affections of the woman from her family and entwine her around their heart, and this is all done secretly, and great misery results. We could read much more of this section, but I want to move on to number 68, on the next page, 29. Each section has a small number next to it, and you can check at the end of the book, it gives all the references. So 68, page 29, subtitled The Power of Love. Love is power. Love is power. I want us to understand that. Intellectual and moral strength are involved in this principle. So love is power. What else is love? It's a principle. What is a principle? How do you understand what a principle is? As opposed to just a law. So the principle and the law are synonymous terms in many ways. What's a principle? I understand a principle to be a law that is unchangeable from one culture to another culture, from one generation to another generation. And many laws don't fit into that category, even many religious laws. There are many laws in the scriptures which are not principles. They're laws that are adapted to a certain time period, to a certain situation, but they're not applicable from generation to generation or in different cultures. So there are laws that deal with the sanctuary service or the typical feasts. Would they be principles? No, because they're only applicable if you live in Jerusalem 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. They're not applicable to other countries, even other time periods. In fact, the climate in this world has changed so much that some of those laws can't even be kept effectively, even in Israel, because of climate change. So the local laws adapted to a specific situation, but a principle is an unchangeable law. So love is power and love is a principle. We also see that its intellectual and moral strength are involved in this principle. Where do we place the intellectual and the moral? What powers are those?
Higher power.
These are higher powers. Over and over again, we're going to see the subject of courtship and marriage is intertwined. It cannot be separated from the gospel. If a person has not experienced the gospel message, they are not fit to be married. And if you were married before experiencing the gospel, or if you're married and haven't experienced the gospel, you should put everything aside and be saved, be converted before you pick up any further duties, before you do anything, before you take on any further responsibilities. Your first duty is to be converted, to be a Christian. Because marriage outside Christianity is a death warrant for both parties. And if you've unfortunately had children in the midst of that misery, it's even worse for them. Love is power, intellectual and moral strength. The higher powers are involved in this principle, in this unchangeable law, and cannot be separated from it. This is what we read in the statement before on the previous page, where it said that he looks beyond the mere externals and is attracted by qualities alone. So the externals are what? The body, the outside body. And what has its seat in the body? The lower passions, the lower powers, the heart. It has its seat, its throne in the body. But true love does not focus upon the external. It says, on qualities. What qualities are those? When you put two passages together, what qualities must they be referring to? Must be the higher powers, mustn't it? The nobility, the honour, the honourableness, the honour, the truthfulness of a person. That's what love should really be attracted to. The power of wealth has a tendency to corrupt and destroy. The power of force is strong to do hurt, but the excellency and value of pure love consists in its efficiency to do good and to do nothing else than good. So if you're in a courtship, is it normal to argue? No, it's not normal to argue. It's common to argue, but it's not normal. We've come so far from what normality is that we think it is normal. We think it's normal to argue. But it says that pure true love has the efficiency to do good and nothing else but good. Now if you're arguing, are you both doing good? No. Can't be. So that love that exists between the two of you is not love, but passion. Perhaps even bordering on vice. lust. If a couple were truly in love, governed by the principle, the law, the power of love, there would be no argumentation. Could there be differences of opinion? Yes. Because no two people are the same. But there wouldn't be argument. So every time you've experienced an argument in a relationship, if you're married, you know that that is not an exhibition of love. It's an exhibition of self-glorification, of passion, of the heart rising up in pride. Whatsoever is done out of pure love, be it ever so little or contemptible in the sight of men, is wholly fruitful. For God regards more with how much love one worketh than the amount he doeth. What does that mean? He doesn't care about the quantity of work you do. What does he care about? The quality with which you do the work. Doesn't matter how much work you do. If you do even a little bit of work, but you do it with the quality of love, that's what's recognized by heaven. Yes? Love is of God. The unconverted heart cannot originate or produce this plant of heavenly growth, which lives and flourishes only where Christ reigns. Where does Christ reign? In the heart. But he won't reign in the heart if it's being shared with an unconverted heart or unconverted principles. He will not share the throne of the soul. Yes? The unconverted heart cannot originate or produce this plant of heavenly growth. It can pretend to, it can deceive. Now if you're in a marriage, in a relationship where life doesn't sound as sweet as this passage says, what can you do? What's the solution? You take your spouse, you shake them, you tell them to read this and sort their lives out. Yes? No. You look at yourself in the mirror, shake yourself and tell yourself to read this. We read this in 1 Corinthians 7. Perhaps, maybe, the converted wife or husband can do what? Sanctify the spouse. There's a slim chance that it might happen. There's a good chance that it might happen. But only if you experience it first. But we could go on and on through this book. There's so much material, it will take ages. But I want to just do another section, which is on courtship, page 33. Beginning from page 33. So we're going to read through this section. We're not going to read everything. I'm going to skip. Hopefully you can keep up with me as I skip. The ideas of courtship have their foundation. So there's a foundation that courtship is built upon. And for most of us, the ideas of courtship have their foundation in erroneous ideas concerning marriage. So what's the problem about wrong courtship? It's our wrong views of marriage. So we've got a wrong view about marriage, and it makes us have a wrong view about how courtship should operate. They, this couple, potential couple, follow impulse and blind passion. The courtship is carried out in a spirit of flirtation. The parties frequently violate the rules of modesty and reserve, and are generally of are guilty of indiscretion if they don't break the law of God. The high, noble, lofty design of God in the institution of marriage is not discerned. Therefore, the purest affections of the heart, the noblest traits of character, are not developed. So, this idea of courtship, she speaks about the spirit of flirtation, violation of the rules of modesty and reserve, indiscretion, breaking of the law, no high and noble or lofty purposes. Is she talking about courtship or marriage? Okay, but she says that courtship has its foundation in the wrong ideas about marriage. So what's that telling you that people think marriage is about? The marriage bed is undefiled, which means you have permission to do anything you want in that bed. And most people take advantage of that. And it's because they have this wrong understanding of what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do in marriage that prepares them to have these wrong ideas about courtship. Can we see that that's what she's saying here? She's saying you don't understand what courtship is and you approach it the wrong way. You behave inappropriately because you think that's how you can behave after courtship when you're in your marriage. There's more physical abuse, certainly more mental abuse, than most people are willing to accept and acknowledge that happens in marriage, let alone outside of the marriage. We're not even talking about adultery or looking at other women. The abuse most women have to face in a marriage relationship is not good. We can just see that here, even without us having to go to the world and see how abusive certain marriages are, even if you don't know examples of it, teaching us that this principle right here. This is why most courtship is done in the wrong way, because it's been inculcated in us. Not one word should be spoken, not one action performed that you would not be willing the holy angels should look upon and register in the books above. Is she speaking about courtship or marriage? Or if she's talking about courtship, but she could be talking equally about marriage, because there's no difference. That means even quarrelling. You know, when we quarrel in our marriages, when we quarrel in our courtships, all of these things are indicative of the fact that we're in an unconverted condition. You should have an eye single to the glory of God. What does that mean if you've got an eye single to the glory of God? It means you can't see anything else, doesn't it? It fills your whole horizon. And it's very similar to the concept of having eyes they do not see, having ears they cannot hear. So where your eye is single to God, it's talking about a person who's converted. The heart should have only pure, sanctified affection, worthy of the followers of Jesus Christ, exalted in its nature and more heavenly than earthly. Anything different from this is debasing, degrading in courtship, and marriage cannot be holy and honourable in the sight of a pure and holy God unless it is after the exalted scriptural principle. If you're making mistakes in your courtship, if you have wrong views on courtship, your marriage is doomed to failure. My advice would be either halt your courtship, separate and get your life in order, or seek for outside help and get counsel on what to do and how to move forward. But don't move ahead. Things are going wrong in your courtship. If you're doing things that are inappropriate and you can't control yourself, get help, get advice. And my counsel would be to separate and to call your courtship off until you get your life in order, and then approach the courtship in a fashion that would be acceptable in God's sight, which would mean counselling with people. If you don't, your marriage is doomed to failure. Next paragraph, 103. I'm going to skip over a few words. The youth should not give themselves away too easily, nor be captivated too readily. By what? By the winning exterior. It's all about exterior. The exterior is what? It's all to do with the lower passions, the lower powers. Courtship it's carried on in this age is a scheme of deception and hypocrisy. Good common sense is needed here, if anywhere. But the fact is, it has little to do in the matter. So why is courtship as carried out in this age a scheme of deception and hypocrisy? Because what do? We're always on our best behaviour. We're always pretending to be something that we're not. We dress extra smart. We bathe before we meet. We take extra caution, extra care to make sure everything is right and in order, when in reality we don't live that way. So we get all of our rubbish, pack it into a corner in a bag, out of sight, out of mind of your prospective partner, so that they can't see. You know, even if you are honourable in your courtship, it would still be a scheme or a practice of deception and hypocrisy. And the reason for that is your potential partner cannot see you in every single circumstance of your life. They can't see you 24/7. They don't really know everything about you because they don't have enough contact time with you. So even if you are 100% open in what you are, in your habits, in your practices, if you really didn't take care of yourself, even then your prospective partner would still not fully understand who you are. It's just the nature of courtship, because you only see each other at certain times and under certain circumstances. And in our context, most of the time it would be in a group setting like this or at church. Very rarely would it be, some kind of private setting that you're by yourselves where no one is there. And if it was in those situations, often we commit this deception willfully, where we pretend to be something that we're not. So I wanted us to realise that even at the best of times, courtship is a deceptive practice by its very nature, because you don't see the person in all of their ugliness. You only see glimpses of them. Even if they try to be honest, even if they try to show you everything about them, you still don't know everything about them. So I want us to understand that precept or principle. I need to find these ones. These are the two round ones. Okay, let's go to page 10. Page 10. Finding the right mate. We'll look at a few thoughts about what a man should look for in a woman. Bottom of page 10, subtitle, What a Man Should Look For in a Woman. Let a young man seek one to stand by his side, who is fitted to bear her share of life's burdens, one whose influence will ennoble and refine him, and who will make him happy in her love. First thing I want us to see is that a young man should seek one to stand where? By his side, not underneath him. This idea of headship is abused. It's been abused since the fall of man, over and over again. Mankind has abused womankind, lorded it over them and tried to be their master. But it's God's will, it's God's design that women should stand side by side next to their men. Next paragraph. Just want to pick up one phrase. It's on the second line. It says, "She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness." So there are two attributes that you should look for in a woman: wisdom and kindness. Fourth paragraph down. "In your choice of a wife, study her character. Will she be one who will be patient and painstaking?" So often we forget about all these attributes. And how do you know if someone's going to be patient? It takes time, doesn't it? It takes time to see that and to understand whether someone is patient or not. You don't understand it just at a week's prophecy school. So you don't know anything about me. You don't know if I'm patient or painstaking. You know nothing about me, because it takes time to get to know people. So it gets time to get to know people. Next paragraph. "A woman who has been taught to take care of herself is also fitted to take care of others." The last line of this page, halfway into the line, it says, "Women should be trained to some business where she can gain a livelihood if necessary." You know, I don't know why we can't see this, but this was written in the 19th century. The 19th century, this is Victoria, the Victorian era. Ellen White is saying that women should enter into business enterprises. They should have some kind of qualification, some kind of education, some kind of profession. And even today, 3 centuries later, the 21st century, in many situations, in many cultures, men still seem to think that women should not be educated, that they should not have any business affairs or business dealings. They shouldn't go into business. They should just stay at home and I don't know do what. I'm not talking about if you're parents, if you have children. The dynamics are different there. But Ellen White counsels that all women should have some kind of business experience, some kind of profession, some kind of qualification. If you're looking for a wife who doesn't have that, the counsel is to move on and look for one that does. Passing over other honourable employments, every girl should learn to take charge of the domestic affairs of home, should be a cook, a housekeeper, a seamstress. That's relatively straightforward. Next paragraph. Knowledge of domestic duties is beyond price to every woman. There are families without number whose happiness is wrecked by the inefficiency of the wife and mother, because they just don't know how to run a family. They don't know how to run a home. If you put these two sentiments together, not only does a woman need to be able to run a home, be able to cook, clean, make her own clothes, but she also needs some kind of qualification in some kind of business enterprise. So it's a tall order to ask of a woman. Page 12, number 50. Questions a girl should ask before marriage. Let a young woman... Oh, no, before we do that, let's just go back one paragraph. This is the letter. Everything that's in italics is a letter that Ellen White's written to specific people. You can see the names. And if you go right back to page 11, it tells you in capitals who the person was and a little bit of background. So she's writing a letter to Rolf, to a person called Rolf, and explains a little bit about him and the person he wants to marry. So, just want to go down, and I want to go to the last paragraph. It says, especially in your marriage relation, be careful to get one who will stand shoulder to shoulder with you in spiritual growth. So, this seems to be a problem in our movement, about this shoulder to shoulder with you in spiritual growth. What do you think that means? How do you understand? Who is the shoulder to shoulder? Who's it talking about? The man and the woman. So if they're shoulder to shoulder, what does that mean? They're standing side by side in what? In spiritual growth. How do you receive spiritual growth? How do you receive spiritual growth? Through the message. My sister, you said? Standing in the work together. So we could draw a reform line. So here's the reform line. 9/11 to midnight. And we could mark that this growth begins where? 9/11. So you're going to grow together. How do we grow spiritually? Intellectually and then spiritually. We don't even need a spirit of prophecy quote to understand that, because we said we eat the little book, goes into our mind, then drops down into our hearts. It's got to be intellectual and then spiritual. So how can a woman stand shoulder to shoulder, grow together with her husband, if she doesn't have access to an intellectual understanding to the message? How can that happen? Can't happen. So I don't know why, and when I say that, because we do have this problem in our movement. I don't know if you have this problem in your movement, your part of the movement, in your part of the world. But there are fellowships around the world where they don't like women teachers. They don't like women taking the divine hour. I'm not sure what it means, the divine hour. It's some cultural thing that someone invented. But they don't like women standing before men and teaching them. I don't know if you have that problem here. I assume not, because you all seem clued up on the message. You all seem to understand how this message operates. So I assume you don't have this problem here. But we do in other parts of the Lord's vineyard across the world. But men, for some reason, want to marry spiritual dwarfs. Because they like looking down at women. And they don't want them to grow. But we're told, Rolf was told, when you marry a woman, when you find one, who are you supposed to look for? One who is willing. I don't even say able, but one who is willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with you in spiritual growth. So as you grow, she grows. Because she's willing to grow. But men, even in this movement, if you can believe it, I know you don't have this problem in this part of the world, get their hands and they keep the women down through practice and precept. I know parts of the world where if a woman stands up to teach, men will walk out of the room. That they'll design the preaching rota where women are excluded. And I don't know why men would want to do that. They obviously must enjoy lonely lives. Because what kind of a marriage are you going to have if you're studying and you cannot even communicate with your best friend? And that's one of the reasons why she's not your best friend, because you have nothing in common with her. because you never allowed her, perhaps you never even wanted her to grow with you. Now, perchance, you do have some of these problems here. Perchance, I'm sure you don't. But if it happened so, I'm hoping that after reading the letter to Rolf that was written in 1886, that the men here, the married men, the young men who want to marry, which should basically mean everybody, would not fall into this trap of keeping the women down. In fact, if you have a fellowship or a movement where you have women, we should be proactively teaching them, for them to have an opportunity to catch up. And not only that, because many women have children, many families have children, and children can be very distracting, we should take special pains to have, as an example perhaps, special convocations where women can come together and learn the truths so that they can have this spiritual growth. I'm really happy to see this prophecy school that special efforts have been made to not have the young children at our meetings, to have them taken care of so that the mothers and sisters are able to participate in the meetings. Seems to me great wisdom that you have hired cooks, not to leave that burden with the sisters. So I can see that already here in Zimbabwe, in your fellowship that you have here, you have men of wisdom and foresight who desire to have women stand shoulder to shoulder and to have spiritual growth. So I'm really thankful for that you have a group that I'm not saying is unique, and I'm not saying doesn't need improvement, but already is exhibiting the characteristics that we should push for in our movement, because in other parts of the world it isn't so. Even in the West, I'm not talking about other African states or in Asia or some what people might call third world countries or second world countries. Even in first world countries, we get this problem, the subjugation of women. And it has to be addressed. Remember we read in 1 Corinthians 7, one of the objectives of Paul was what? To confront the social norms of his generation. And we should be doing the same. We should be confronting the social norms. And the social norms today is not that everybody has to get married, because most people aren't getting married nowadays. The issue that we face is that women are suppressed. Even though we've been, as Adventists, in this message since 1844, and we've got an abundance of counsel, it's still a problem in our movement. Let a young woman accept as a life companion only one who possesses pure, manly traits of character, one who is diligent, aspiring and honest, one who loves and fears God. When it says pure, manly traits of character, what one word would be used here? Pure, manly traits. Virtue. If you look at the word virtue or virtuous, if you went to Proverbs 31, it talks about a virtuous woman. Virtue is talking about a pure, manly trait. Even in a woman, it's talking about valor and honour and uprightness. Before giving her hand in marriage, every woman should inquire whether he with whom she is about to unite her destiny is worthy. What has been his past record? Is his life pure? Is the love which he expresses of a noble, elevated character, or is it mere emotional fondness? Which means, is he just attracted by my looks? What happens after I've had 2 babies and my body doesn't look the same? Or, God forbid, we have have an accident and I get scarred, or I have some injury and I lose my looks. Certainly by midlife, many women don't hold and retain the youthfulness of the beauty that they had when they were 20. Hence so much adultery in marriage. Because unfortunately these women did not make inquiry to see what kind of man they were marrying. Has he the traits of character that will make her happy? Can she find true peace and joy in his affection? Will she be allowed to preserve her individuality? Or must her judgment and conscience be surrendered to the control of her husband? Sisters, if you're in courtship, if you're looking at someone as a potential person, and you see even the slightest hint of overbearingness, you should run. If you see any manifestation that they wish to control how you think, how you dress, what you say, what you speak, how you eat, find another man. Because if he's doing that in courtship, where he's on his best behaviour, heaven knows what he's going to do when he's got you under lock and key behind closed doors. It's worse than prison, because most prison sentences you can escape from. They let you off after a certain period of time. Marriage is a lifelong death sentence, because it's a living hell. Ask people who are married, who are not happy. Ask the 99 marriages out there. There's only one marriage in 100 that is approved of heaven, that can find pure happiness. Most of the other ones, they just end up putting up with a bad deal. Sorry? And it's so unfortunate. My sister said sometimes the older sisters pass on all these bad things and they expect them and counsel them to just go with the flow. And how sad is that? You know, you've gone through misery and it's almost like saying, at least I'm not in it by myself. They can suffer as well. And I know that's not the motivation, because we say we can't break the norms of society. We have to follow along, grit your teeth and bear it. But we must not. This movement is shifting from children of rebellion to children of the kingdom of heaven. And we have to operate on different principles. And I think, even though my sister didn't quite say this, it's the responsibility of the older brothers and sisters in this movement to lead out in this transformation and change. You can't expect teenagers to fight against a system that is overwhelming, like a flood that will squash them. They need the protection from the older brethren here, the people of experience, to set a different way.
Amen.
And if your marriages were not set up on the right basis as an older couple, study the counsel and be open about this issue, about the mistakes that you have made, the things that have gone wrong, and give the young people an opportunity to do things right. Don't force them into accepting these cultural norms which are damaging and harmful and perpetuate misery. Can she honour the Saviour's claims as supreme? Will body and soul, thoughts and purposes be preserved pure and holy? When the novelty of marriage is over, that means after you've been together on the first night, will he still love me? will he love me still? Will he still love me after I've given him my body? And unfortunately, most men don't, because they don't know how women are put together. They have different expectations, because their version of a woman is what they see on the internet nowadays, through pornography, or on billboards, or on movies. And if you're married, if you're a man, without being indiscreet in any way, or being crass about this issue, you know that a real woman is not like the women that you see in the movies, or in pornography, or in books, or on billboards. Real women do not even look like that. And this is the problem that men face, young men, that they have a wrong understanding of what women look like. Even physically, they have no idea what they look like, except this warped, distorted vision. And 99.99% of women don't look that way. And that's disregarding all the internal issues about how women think, their emotional state, the emotional highs and lows they have on the monthly cycle. All of these things men don't understand. And after the novelty of marriage is worn off, they lose interest. Will he be patient with my mistakes? Or will he be critical, overbearing, and dictatorial? And all of that, if you do courtship correctly, you'll be able to discern. Guarantee you. If courtships were done properly, and you made proper research into his past behaviour, you checked and analysed him in different situations, you would quickly know if he's patient, critical, or overbearing and dictatorial. True affection will overlook many mistakes. Love will not discern them. Love can't even see mistakes. How much time have we got? No man is excusable for being without financial ability. You know, I was reticent to bring this paragraph up, because I know a little. I haven't experienced, because I'm not from here, that this issue of finances is a major issue in Zimbabwe. So I appreciate and I understand that. But yet the council must hold even here. No man is excusable for being without financial ability. Of many a man it may be said, he is kind, amiable, generous, a good man, even a Christian, but he is not qualified to manage his own business. As far as the outlay of means is concerned, he is a mere child. He has not been brought up by his parents to understand and to practice the principles of self-support. I have no solution to this problem here in your local situation, but nevertheless, it's a dangerous business for sisters to marry someone, marry a man who has no means of being able to support himself. This is outside of the whole dowry system. And they have a particular special name for that, which I don't know what that name is. Next paragraph actually talks about dowries, the purpose of the dowries, and the usefulness of them. And the purpose is obvious, I think. It's to show you commitment of taking care of this woman. In olden days, there was a provision made if you were poor that you could work for this woman. And that's, all of us are familiar with the story of Jacob. So I just want to change themes slightly. I know I've gone over time. We've spoken about, so we're not dealing with courtship and marriage, But it's all about courtship and marriage, because it's all about being converted and understanding how the process works. We've spoken about steps to Christ, 47.1, and it's all about the will. You can't change the heart. We've spoken about the threefold nature. We've spoken about the twofold nature, higher and lower powers. We've spoken about the lower passions, the mind, the higher powers, how they need to be in balance. We've spoken about the necessity of having heart conversion, about the truth entering the mind, going into the heart. I've tried to explain this understanding of the process of salvation through different symbols or different models or different parables, so that we can have a more comprehensive view of how this works. But there's one point that I haven't mentioned that I want us to discuss and think about. Now, do we believe in once saved, always saved? Now, we don't believe in that, but I think many of us do. I think many of us actually secretly do. And what I mean by that is our concept, our model of conversion. So we've got this heart that was calloused, and then is all fixed up. So this is a heart of stone, and this is a heart of flesh. There's no seed in here, no word. Here's the seed, and it can bear fruit. So we've spoken about this, but what we haven't spoken about is the issue or the idea that once saved, always saved doesn't operate. So part of the problem of understanding this issue is the subject matter that's brought up in Steps to Christ 47.1. You make these commitments and you don't follow through with them, and you keep on breaking and making and breaking these commitments. Or we might say, sin, repent, sin, repent, sin, repent. So part of it is this understanding or lack of understanding of how the heart conversion process works. So once a person's been converted, now they're happy to do what? To obey without question. They're happy to obey without question. So here we are. It's 9 a.m. No, not 9 a.m. because you'll wake up early to do your devotion. 6 a.m. You've given your heart to the Lord. You've surrendered completely to Him. You had a beautiful devotion and you have a love for the Lord. Now it's 7 a.m. You've showered and it's breakfast. And what's the problem at breakfast? You have to meet this person. Your dear wife. You've been dreading it. So now you meet her, and here your heart was like this, all happy and joyful and radiant. And now you meet her, you just have to look at her. And what's happened? You remembered what happened, what she said to you yesterday. She got you breakfast, your slop, threw it down in front of you and said, "There you go." You don't say anything, because you've been in devotion for an hour. And how are you feeling? You're obeying, aren't you? But are you loving to obey? No. You're not loving to obey. So what suddenly happened to you? You're now unconverted. You're keeping the law in your own strength and you're gritting your teeth. quickly eat breakfast, because she gave you some junk, you didn't want to even eat it. You go to work, it's 9 a.m, and who do you meet? Your beautiful secretary. She knows how to dress properly. And now you feel joyous again. And you sin for the rest of the day. No sin. Everything's good. And then 5 o'clock, you're heading home in the car and you're dreading. You're already chipping your teeth. You're all cracked. You grit your teeth. And you meet your spouse 6:30 because you're a health reformer. You don't eat late. And there you got confronted again. The house hasn't been tidied. She's a housewife. She doesn't do anything. So here's a mess. You look at her, compared to that, and you don't even speak. So you don't even get to an argument. And how you feeling? Rough. But you don't say anything. And you grit your teeth. And the problem is, we live like this day by day. Gritting your teeth. By the time, after 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, it's like a balloon that you pump up. What's going to happen? When you get to the 10th day, you're going to fail the test and you're going to explode. Then what do? Next day, to your devotion, take the colours away, and you go through another 10-day cycle. Yep. And you wonder, I thought Christianity was supposed to work. So, what we need to think about is that once saved is not always saved. So, here at breakfast, what are you supposed to do when you see your grumpy, miserable wife? You're supposed to obey and not say or do anything wrong. But is that enough? No. What must you do? You must love to obey. And how do you love to obey? You need to go to Christ. So in that conflict right here, what you need to do is excuse yourself from the table, go into your closet, go on your knees and ask God to give you strength to do what? To love that situation, to love your spouse, to love the slop that she's fed you, to have pleasure in misery. You get up from that, you go to your table and you're happy. At 7 she reminds you that you didn't do something with an aggressive tone. And suddenly all those feelings, what happened to them? They rise up again after you were all cleaned up. So how long did your heart conversion last? 10 minutes. So what's going wrong? What's going wrong in your life that you're only converted for 10 minutes? Nothing. Nothing is going wrong. Because maybe that's as much power as God gave you. 10 minutes worth of grace too. Because what does He want you to do now? Go back to the toilet, to your closet, and ask for grace again. And that grace might see you through to 9 o'clock. And then you're confronted with this woman. And now you need grace again. And maybe you need to address your secretary to ask her to give you some grace and sort her life out with a dress code. Because Because over and over again, what you're going to be required to do through the day is continually go to your closet and ask for God's help at every single conflict, at every single test. Sometimes this heart conversion can last a minute, 5 seconds, 5 hours, maybe 5 years. Maybe it will last a lifetime if you were into smoking and that addiction has such a grip on you, you can't even function. You go on your knees and say, Lord, take this addiction away, and He converts you on this for the rest of your life. You never have a problem on smoking again. It all depends upon God. He decides how long this conversion lasts for. If you can understand that last, if I can put it this way, the last piece of the puzzle, it's not really the last piece, but one of the major pieces of the puzzle, that heart conversion doesn't last forever. Sometimes it lasts for a fraction of a second, and you have to keep on your knees. Maybe not literally, because if you're driving, you can't go on your knees, you can't even close your eyes. It doesn't last forever, it can only last for a few moments. Because what does, I like speaking to the men here, if you're married, or if you're not married, what kind of a wife do you want? You want a wife that all she does is look at you. And if you walk, she just follows you like this, like a zombie. Isn't it? You want someone who has got only eyes for you, total 100% dependence upon you. Yet, she needs to be virtuous, a strong, manly person who can think for herself and be courageous. But yet, you want her to drool all over you. Isn't it? This is what God wants. So if He changed your heart at 6 o'clock and you were good to go all day long, how much of God would you need? None. You wouldn't even turn to Him. Conversion is like drug dependency. You have to continually have it, otherwise you get jitters and things start going wrong. You start having these fits of lust or anger or all manner of concupiscence. So conversion is like drug dependency. God has designed it that you have to keep on coming back to Him over and over again. Will this problem get resolved in heaven? No. It's going to be like that forever. That's why heaven is a ceaseless approaching to Christ. This dependency will continue through millennia, because this is what it was designed to be. This is how sinless people can do sin. This is how Lucifer, without any tempter, can commit such grievous crimes in heaven, the perfect atmosphere. Because he doesn't want to understand this idea of dependency upon God. The conversion is not once saved, always saved. I know people say they don't believe it, but I don't agree with you. I think most of you, at the back of your mind, think you've done your devotion, you're good to go for the day. And if perchance something happens, you grit your teeth and march through it. Because you're relying upon this thing here. You do it for long enough, even in the context of one day, you'll fail. This is why we sin. This is why our model of sanctification doesn't work. It's not fit for purpose. Because we don't understand that conversion doesn't last. It was never designed to last, and it cannot endure, because it has this context about it that you have total dependency as a woman upon the man, as the body upon the head, upon the bride to the bridegroom, upon a Christian to Christ. And if you can understand that, that's what the problem is. That you from this moment on would never, ever grit your teeth. Hopefully that's the term that you understand what I mean by that. You just, in your own strength, you do it. Because that is the old covenant. And you can get through life perfectly well. You may not even fail the 10th test. But in mercy, God will not let you endure that. Because sooner or later you'll end up giving up. because it's really hard going. And besides that, it's not even enjoyable. And marriage, even though you may not believe it, if you've experienced it, was designed to be a pleasurable experience. It really was. All relationships were. All relationships were designed to be pleasurable. And the one that we all know that is pleasurable is friendship. That's why God wants friendship to enter into the marriage relationship. And I said this before, not jokingly, divorce, separate, and come back together as friends. Or as the world would say, cohabit. It works. You have a functioning relationship because you're free to leave anytime you want to. And if you did that, you'd stay for the right reasons because it's your friend and you want to be with them. You enjoy doing things together. And that can happen even if your marriage isn't working now. It can happen if you're willing to put some effort into it. So I've run out of time. 2 minutes, I want to give a little story. It's a real story, it's not my story. So, we don't do this too often in Adventism. Perhaps we should. But some places they do. It's called marriage counselling schools. So, the conference, what you might do it, I don't know. The conference will advertise, there's a weekend retreat for couples. You do that, couples retreats? And you get this expert minister who understands about marriage and courtship and relationships, marriage counselling, and people go there. Often it's people with bad marriages. They'll go there to try and get some help. So this is a story, it's not Adventist, but it doesn't matter. And the couple are in the meetings and they make an appointment to see the person. They sit down and this woman looks really aggravated and really upset. And they start talking and she just pushes her husband aside and starts spieling all of her grievances. And she starts telling this man, counsellor, how bad her husband is. So he says, okay, hold on a minute. Does he work hard? Yes. Does he provide for the family? Yes. Does he love you? Yes. Is he kind and respectful? Yes. And the counsellor's thinking, this man sounds quite good, what's the problem? And then he says, what's wrong with your husband? She says, this is one thing. It really irritates me. Everything else is really good, but this is one thing. The man is untidy. He doesn't take care of his things. He comes home, sits down on the bed, takes his socks off, throws one over here, one over there, and won't clear up after himself. Leave his underwear over there to the showering. He just won't take, and I always have to follow through after him and clear up his mess. And I've told him repeatedly that he needs to take care of it. So it doesn't cost him anything. All he needs to do is just pick up the mess after him. I want you to speak to my husband and straighten him out on this issue so we can have a happy marriage. So, the counsellor doesn't know what to do. He has some words with them, tries to patch up things, and she leaves disgruntled, and that's the end of this conversation. So this woman's problem is, husband's perfect in everything, but he won't take care of the mess. And everybody knows in the family, how much effort is it to get your socks and put them into the linen basket, and to pick up your underwear and hang your towel up. It doesn't cost any effort, does it, men? No? So why would we expect our wives to do that for us, or our mothers, if we live at home? We shouldn't, yes? This woman's agreed, and they're close to divorcing on this issue. A few years go by, and he's at another conference, and this couple come to him, and he doesn't even recognise her. She looks 10 years younger. She's glowing and beaming and really happy. She goes, do you remember us? He says, no. He goes, we were the couple that I complained about my husband, so untidy and messy. And she's beaming with smiles. He said, oh, so he changed, did he? That counselling session worked. Now he picks up his mess after him. And your marriage is happy. She says, no. He's still as messy as he ever was. Nothing's changed. So the counsellor says, so why are you so happy then? I thought you were going to divorce him. She says, you know what? It only takes about 30 seconds to go after my husband, pick up his socks, pick up his underwear, hang his towel up, put it away, and that's 30 seconds outside of from my day, and I carry on with my day. It doesn't cost me anything. So it's a real life story. Think about it. You don't have to get your partner to change as long as you change. If you love to serve your partner, you can have a happy marriage. Really, you can have a happy marriage. Even if your husband is filthy and dirty and doesn't take care of anything in the house, you can still have a happy marriage. So, that's Heavenly Father, we all are brides, potential brides. And we know that you are more desirous to marry us than anything else that we could ever imagine. And Lord, we want to thank you that the principles of heaven are not based upon force, but upon love and affection. Lord, why is it that in our relationships with our children, with our spouses, with our brothers and sisters, even between brethren, we claim to love one another, we claim to respect one another, but we always want to exert ourselves by force upon each other, and are not willing to let love take control. This principle that rules the higher powers, that works from the higher powers, subduing the lower nature. Lord, help us to understand the principles of salvation. Help us to put them into practice. May we see that conversion is a moment-by-moment work that often is fleeting and needs to be replenished with your love repeatedly throughout the day. May it be our purpose, not only as we already have committed to will to do your will, in our minds to keep your commandments and be kind and courteous, but now, Father, as we have learned more about your principles, may we love to behave that way. May we not be willing, under any circumstances, to force our will upon another brother or sister, upon our children, but especially upon our spouses. Father, this room is filled with young people. Lord, it's my prayer and my hope that these thoughts, these ideas, these truths have caught these people before they make lifelong mistakes. For others here, Lord, who are already married, perhaps not in the best relationships, may these truths be such as are enabling and empowering and enlightening, and above all, Lord, hopeful. Messages that are full of hope that things can get better. That the person, perhaps last week, who we thought was our greatest enemy, can in reality become our greatest friend. We know that this is your dream, your desire, Lord. For us, may it be our experience in our relationships here on earth. It's our prayer in Jesus' name.